What if I told you the same technology that drives the Netflix recommendation is also behind the self-driving cars? It can write poems, it can create sculptures, and it can also create images and videos. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. Artificial intelligence is no longer a science fiction. And today, my friends, is woven into our lives from the Netflix recommending you the next binge watch to the voice assistant setting your morning alarms. But behind the scenes, behind this all magic, lies a jungle of strange word, heavy jargon, machine learning, deep learning, tokens, neural networks. Well, today I'm going to take 15 most used essential AI and generative AI terms, break them down in simple language with real world examples. And once we understand the basics, we will take a tour, a fun tour. Yes, there is a brilliant analogy that I've created for you to understand all these 15 terms. I have also created one-page PDF file for all of you. You can download it for free. The link is given in the description box. Alright, so let's start with the big one, the umbrella term artificial intelligence. In simple words, any machine or program that can perform tasks which normally would need human intelligence. For example, thinking, reasoning and decision making. So let me tell you how it works. Even a simple chess playing program can make artificial intelligence, the use of artificial intelligence to make the decision. And what can be the examples of the same? Well, Google Maps suggesting you the fastest route. Also, spam filters which are removing the junk mails from your email boxes. This is the whole field like an umbrella term. Let's understand our second term, and that is machine learning. So in simple words, machine learning is a type of artificial intelligence where machine learns from the data instead of being given strict rules. And how it works? Well, you feed in the data, it identifies the patterns and makes some predictions. And what can be the examples? Well, Netflix, it recommends you the shows or the movies because it learned your taste based on your previous watch. And what is the key point? Well, the machine learning is about learning the patterns automatically. Now let's come to the third term, and that is deep learning. In simple words, deep learning is one step even further than the machine learning. So it is a more advanced form of the machine learning only that uses the neural network with many layers. And how it works? Well, every layer learns a deeper pattern, making it powerful for the things like images, voice and natural language. And the examples could be self-driving cars identifying the traffic signals, the people, the hurdles on the road, and also the face recognition in your phone. So what is the hierarchy? Well, first of all, we have AI, which is any smart machine, which is at the top, the umbrella term. Then we have machine learning. This one learns from the data. Finally, we have deep learning, which is the machine learning, which uses the deep neural networks. We can also see the large language models in this diagram, but let me come back to that in just a little while, because now that we are talking about the neural networks, let's take it as the fourth term. But before we move ahead, imagine this, that you walk into a meeting and someone casually drops the terms like agentic AI or generative AI models or large language models. What are you going to do? Are you going to simply nod your head, or will you be confident enough to answer them, explain them what exactly these terms are? Well, in the very next video, my friends, I will hand over you a ultimate guide, a ready reckoner with 51 terms that will be covering everything from the AI basics to the latest in the generative AI and the agentic AI. And here is the best part. I have also created everything, all these 51 terms into this beautiful mind map that you can download for free, print it, keep it on your desk and keep learning the AI every day. So do not miss to watch the very next video, and the best way to do so is subscribe to the channel and press that bell icon so that you get the timely notification. And now let's jump on to the neural network. That's our fourth term for the day. The neural network, my friends, is a system of neurons which you can think of small mathematical units that are connected together, very much like our own brains. And how it works? Well, each neuron makes a small decision, pass it on to the other one, and together all the neurons all these networks make a big decision. So let's take some examples. Well, looking at the pixels of an image, neurons combine the information and say, yes, this is a dog or this is a cat. And what is the key point here? Well, the key point is that the neural network are actually the foundations of the modern AI, especially the deep learning. And now that we are talking about lot of training, how this neural network works, this brings to the fifth term, and that is training data. So what exactly is training data? Well, in simple words, these are the examples that we give to the artificial intelligence to learn from. So how does it work? Well, AI does not magically would know the things. It needs some basic information, some basic data to learn upon, and that data is actually your training data. What can be the examples of the same? As I just mentioned, you can provide thousands of pictures of the dogs or cats or any other object, maybe a water bottle or maybe some lights here. All these images, all this data will actually form the basis for the AI to learn and say, okay, this looks like a cat. And similarly, you can use other data as well. For example, you want to build a chatbot, you can give the data to the AI model, for example, the previous customer chat history or the transaction conversations that you have done. That will be the base training data for your AI model. But friends, with the training data, you have to remember a very important concept of garbage in and garbage out. So the AI model, your AI model will be as good or as bad as you provide the data for it to train on. So that's a very important information, and you have to be very careful with your training data. That brings us to the sixth term, and that is algorithm. In simple words, algorithm is a set of instructions for problem solving. How it works? Well, in machine learning, algorithm decides how the AI learns from the data. What can be the examples? Well, a sorting algorithm that arrange the numbers from small to large or large to small or any other pattern, and the machine learning algorithm like decision trees that really learns the rules. For example, if the weather is raining, then you carry an umbrella. So those kind of if and else intelligence, that is also part of the algorithms. So what is the key point? Well, algorithm, you can think it of as a method or a rule book. Now let's take a step forward and understand a very important term, and that is model. No, not these kind of models, but the model in our context is the brain of the AI after training on the data. And how it works? Well, the data we talked about earlier and the algorithm we just talked about equals to trained model, and this model is now ready to make the predictions. So what can be the examples of the same? See, after the training, the model can say this email is spam. And what is the key point? Well, the key point is that the model is the end product of the training that you have done so far on the model with the base training data. And that brings us to a very important and probably the most common term that you are hearing these days, and that is generative AI. So what exactly is generative AI? In very simple words, the AI that can create something. Yes, so Gen AI is equal to the generative AI. So any AI who is able to create or generate something is generative AI. Now it could be text, it could be images, it could be videos or some essay or note or summarization, anything that was not earlier existing but the AI generated. So how it works? Well, it learns from the patterns from the huge amount of the data, and then it generates new things that looks as if they were made by humans. So what can be the examples? Well, I'm sure that you all know about chat GPTs. That is one good example of generative AI. Unlike the older AI, which were only used to make predictions or pattern matching, now generative AI takes a step further. They can now generate things. So that is the key difference between normal AI and the generative AI. Now let's come to the LLM. We talked about the chart in the hierarchy. That is LLM, which is large language model. In simple term, a huge AI model trained on tons and tons of the text designed to understand and generate human-like language. What are the examples? Once again, ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Anthropic Claude, all these are example of the LLM models. So what is the key point here for you to remember? Well, LLMs are the engines behind the chatbots and the writing AI models. And now that we are talking about the generative AI, the chat GPT is the Google Gemini, no AI model can work without the prompt. So what exactly is prompt? Well, prompt is, in a very simple term, is actually any input that you give to the AI or the set of instructions that you give to the generative AI model to generate something and expect the response from the Gen AI model. What are the examples of the same? Well, you can write a poem about moon. Well, anything that you want to do, you can tell the prompt what is the level of output that you're expecting. Are you more scientific pattern or language, or do you want a very basic childlike essay on the moon? So that is the kind of level that you can also set when you're giving the prompt to the AI or Gen AI models. So what is the key point? Of course, the better the prompt, the better the output. That is the key point. Now let's talk about a term which probably you don't hear every day, but it's very important to understand, and that is tokens. So in simple words, small chunk of text that the AI use instead of whole sentences. So everything in AI is getting broken into small chunks, and these chunks are called tokens. So what can be the example of the same? So let's say that I say I love pizza. The AI will break down this I love pizza. So these are three tokens. But friends, everything, all the AI models, nothing is free from bias. And what is the bias actually? Well, bias, my friends, in a simple terms, when AI makes unfair or one-sided decision because of bad training data, that's exactly what bias means. If you have unbalanced data, the data is not scattered, the data is not covering the vast majority of the use cases, then it brings bias to your AI outputs or AI models. And that brings us to a very interesting term, that is overfitting. So, overfitting, my friends, is actually when AI memorizes training data instead of learning the general rules. Little hard to understand, so let me give you some example of this. So let's say that a student memorizes a practice question, but it fails when the teacher changes the number. So you memorize that 2 plus 2 is 4, but let's say when you were in the real exam, the numbers were changed. Now it's like 22 plus 22, and then you fumbled. So that happens when the AI tried to memorize the results. What can be the other example? Well, AI trained on perfect picture perfect studio photos instead of real photos, like which have some noise, which have some blurriness to it. In that case also the AI can make mistakes, and that brings us to a very interesting term, that is natural language processing or NLP. What is NLP? In simple terms, NLP is the field of the AI that helps computers to understand and work with human language. So what can be the examples? A perfect example could be the Google Translate, which translate the sentences from one language to other. Then, for example, when you interact with your mobile assistants, for example, Siri, and finally, chatbot. Well, chatbot is a program that talks with you using the AI. How it works? Well, it uses NLP because every chatbot has to understand your language, which is in the form of the prompt that we just talked about. And once it understands the language, then only it generates some output. So examples are very simple. You are using it, chat GPT. So let me summarize key things here, and then we will jump on to a very wonderful analogy, the school analogy. So AI is the big field. ML is the AI that learns from the data. Deep learning, on the other hand, is a powerful ML that uses neural network. And then we have Gen AI that generates some new content, and LLMs like ChatGPT are a type of generative AI that handles the human language. And now, my friends, let's take a very cool school analogy to make you understand and remember all the terms and all the jargon. And we are going to keep the sequencing of the terms exactly the same how we learned. So starting with the artificial intelligence or AI, so the entire school system or the school itself is like artificial intelligence. So then what is machine learning? Well, machine learning, you can think it of as the teaching methods where the students, in bracket I would say machines, learn by practicing with the examples. So example could be, instead of memorizing the rules, the students solve a lot of math problems to learn the patterns. And then what is deep learning in this school? Well, deep learning is a specialized teaching method where the students, they learn in layers, step by step. And the examples could be learning language by first recognizing, familiarizing themselves with the letters, then learning about the grammars, and then writing long essays or maybe books even. Now let's talk about the what is neural network in our school. Well, neural network could be the student's brain with neurons that passes the signals to each other and helps the student to think. And then the training data would be the textbooks or the homeworks that teachers are giving you to learn. And what can be the algorithm in our school? Well, that's easy. The algorithm is the teaching strategy the teacher uses to make you learn. So examples could be, sometimes the teachers are telling you that you have to practice. So practice by repetition or practice or learn by example can be considered as algorithms. And what is the model? So our student has learned from the data, from the examples, from the practice, and that's the final output of the training that becomes the model. Generative AI, on the other hand, could be thought of as creative student who doesn't just solve the problems, but he also think about new stories, new patterns, new drawings, compose songs. So that kind of student can be categorized as generative AI. And when we talk about the large language model, the literature genius student that has read millions of books and can write his own essays, answer questions, and have hold conversations. So that kind of student would be categorized as large language models like ChatGPT. And what is a prompt? Well, the question on the exam paper given to the student is a prompt. So it tells you to write an essay on climate change. So that is giving you a prompt to do something or generate some output. Tokens, on the other hand, can be thought of as words or pieces of words that the user uses to build the answers. For example, when he writes an essay on climate change, each word can be considered as a token. Bias, what can be the bias? Now the student who is having unfair opinions found because of reading, let's say, some specific literature or viewpoints or some specific writers, and then they become inclined towards some school of thought, that becomes bias. Okay. Overfitting, on the other hand, can be students who are just memorizing the answers without understanding concepts. Don't do that. Then we come to the natural language processing, which is NLP. So the student with the language skills, reading, writing, speaking, understanding, that can be a good example of NLP. And finally, the chatbot, a friendly student who can chat with you and answer your questions, that is our chatbot. So let's do a quick recap of everything that we learned. AI is equal to the school, ML is your teaching method, deep learning is the advanced teaching method, neural network is the student's brain, training data is your test book, algorithm is the teaching style, model is the trained student, GenAI is the creative student, LLM is the language genius student, prompt is your exam questions, token is the words that student writes, bias is unfair opinions from the textbooks, overfitting is memorizing instead of understanding or learning, NLP is the student with great language skills, and chatbot is your study buddy. Okay, so those were 15 very essential, very basic terms, AI, generative AI, that you really want to learn and get a hold of. And let me know which of the terms are your favorite. Maybe I will try to cover in the very next video where we are gonna cover 51 terms. And if you find this video useful, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Do not forget to press that bell icon to receive all the timely notification. Share these videos on your social media platforms. And that's all for today. Keep learning, stay healthy, and thanks for watching.